My name is Hannah Collins, and until a random Wednesday night in Portland, Oregon, I believed I was doing life the right way. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't chaotic, I wasn't dramatic. I paid my bills early, I meal prepped on Sundays, I had reminders set for everything from oil changes to when the rent auto-drafted. I believed structure was protection. If my life stayed tidy and predictable, nothing bad would sneak in through the cracks. For 4 years, I shared an apartment with my boyfriend, Evan. He was 33, worked in B2B sales, and had the kind of job that sounded impressive but vague enough that I never fully understood what his days actually looked like. Client dinners, networking, relationship building. Those words came up a lot. Usually right before he'd leave the apartment dressed better than usual. From the outside, we looked stable, quiet, boring in a safe way. No screaming fights, no social media drama, no broken phones or slammed doors. People told me all the time how solid we seemed. I took that as proof I was doing something right. That night started the same way most nights did. It was a little after 7. Rain tapped softly against the windows, the kind of Portland drizzle that never fully commits. I was in socks and an oversized sweater, stirring pasta on the stove, listening to a podcast I'd already heard before. Evan came out of the bedroom adjusting the cuffs of a dark button-down shirt I didn't recognize. "Big dinner?" I asked, not looking up. "Yeah," he said. "Potential new account. Could be huge." I nodded, because that was my role. I nodded, I supported, I didn't interrogate. I didn't ask why he'd spent nearly an hour getting ready for something that supposedly happened over steak and spreadsheets. He smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar. A sharper cologne. Cleaner somehow. When I noticed, I told myself it was nothing. People switch fragrances. That's normal. Right? "You look nice," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. He smiled at his reflection instead of at me. "Gotta stay competitive." He checked his watch, leaned in to kiss my forehead, and grabbed his keys. "Don't wait up. These things always run late." "How late?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He shrugged. "Midnight, maybe 1. I'll text." "Okay," I said. "Have fun." The door closed behind him with a soft click, and the apartment felt quieter than it should have. I ate dinner alone, answered a few work emails, folded laundry that didn't really need folding. Around 10:30, I sent a casual text. "How's it going?" No response. I didn't panic. I didn't spiral. I told myself he was busy, that sales dinners were loud, that phones got ignored. I'd built my entire identity around being the kind of woman who didn't overreact. By 11:30, the rain had stopped. Midnight came and went. I checked my phone again, still nothing. That was when a familiar tightness settled in my chest. Not fear exactly, something quieter, something older, the feeling that whispered, "Pay attention." Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling because you didn't want to seem paranoid? Have you ever talked yourself out of your own instincts just to keep the peace? If you have, tell me in the comments. I read them all. And if stories like this matter to you, the quiet ones, the ones that don't explode right away, subscribe. Because what happened next didn't just change my relationship, it changed how I trust myself. Now, let me tell you what happened at 1:58 a.m. By 12:30, I tried calling him. It went straight to voicemail. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the distant sound of cars passing on the street below. Every set of headlights that flickered across the wall made my heart jump. Each one felt like it might be him. I told myself I was catastrophizing. I'd been accused of that before. "You always assume the worst," an ex once told me. "It's exhausting." I didn't want to be that woman again. So I stayed still, quiet, reasonable. At 1:47 a.m., I checked our shared location, something we'd agreed on months earlier for safety. His dot sat downtown, nowhere near his office, a cluster of bars and late-night restaurants. Client dinners happen at bars, I told myself. Deals close over drinks. My phone rang at 1:58 a.m. The sound sliced through the silence so sharply that I gasped. Evan's name lit up the screen. Relief rushed through me so fast I almost laughed. I answered on the first ring. "Hannah," he said, breathless. His voice was thick, uneven. I could hear traffic behind him, laughter, music bleeding from somewhere nearby. "I need money right now." I sat up in bed. "What? Are you okay?" "My rideshare account is locked. Some payment issue. I need $300 for a cab. Just send it." "300? Where are you that a cab costs that much?" "That's not important. Just send it. I need to get home." A thread of something cold slid into my voice. "How did you get there if your app wasn't working?" "Someone dropped me off," he said quickly. "Now I'm stuck. Please stop interrogating me and help me." The knot in my chest tightened, no longer pretending to be harmless. I pictured the unfamiliar shirt, the new cologne, the silence, the location pen. All the small things I'd been smoothing over for weeks finally lined up. I took a slow breath. "Ask the woman you went out with," I said quietly. There was a pause, complete silence. "What?" he said. "You heard me," I replied. "Ask whoever you were actually with tonight to give you a ride or lend you the money." "You're being paranoid," he snapped. "I was at a work dinner." "And you're lying," I said. "Are you seriously going to leave me stranded? After everything I've done for you?" I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't raise my voice. I hung up. I flipped my phone face down, set it to silent, and lay back in the dark. For the first time in weeks, my mind didn't race. It went quiet. I didn't sleep much after that call. Not because I was panicking, surprisingly I wasn't, but because my mind kept replaying the same quiet moments from the past few months, lining them up like puzzle pieces I'd refused to look at too closely. When morning came, it didn't feel like a shock. It felt like confirmation. Looking back, the signs hadn't been dramatic. They never are. They were small enough to ignore, reasonable enough to explain away, familiar enough to feel safe. It started with his phone. At first, it was just a habit. Evan began placing it face down on tables. When I noticed, I told myself I was reading into it. Everyone has quirks. Maybe he didn't like notifications lighting up the room. Maybe he just wanted to be present. I wanted to believe that. Then he started taking it with him everywhere, the bathroom, the shower, even when he was brushing his teeth. I laughed it off, made jokes about him guarding state secrets. He laughed too, rolled his eyes, kissed my forehead, and said I was ridiculous. So I let it go. The notifications stopped lighting up his screen. Do Not Disturb became permanent. When I asked, casually, lightly, he said it was for work, clients in different time zones. He needed focus. He needed boundaries. Boundaries. That word did a lot of heavy lifting. There were the canceled plans. Dinners we were supposed to have together that suddenly turned into work emergencies. Birthdays I attended alone because a client needed him. Nights I fell asleep to the sound of keys at 2 in the morning and told myself it meant he was working hard for us. I didn't want to be the girlfriend who made everything about herself. So I adjusted. I adapted. I lowered my expectations without admitting that's what I was doing. I told myself this was what mature love looked like, two people supporting each other's goals, even when it was inconvenient. Sometimes he came home smelling like cologne I didn't recognize. Sharp, clean, not bad, just unfamiliar. He'd say, "The guys were messing around with sample bottles. New campaign. I probably got sprayed." It was plausible. That's the worst part. Every lie was just believable enough to fit into the space between my doubt and my desire to keep the peace. I wanted us to work, so I helped the lies do their job. About 6 weeks before that night, something shifted. Evan was still physically there, on the couch, in our bed, in the kitchen asking where we kept the extra coffee filters, but emotionally, he had tilted away from me. Not abruptly, not obviously, just enough that I could feel the imbalance. He'd sit next to me while we watched a show and sink straight into his phone. He laughed at messages I couldn't see, short, sharp bursts of amusement that didn't include me. "What's funny?" I'd ask. "Group chat. Work idiots. You wouldn't get it." Sometimes it was college friends, sometimes memes. Always something that placed me just outside the circle, close enough to hear the laughter, too far to share it. One night, after days of that quiet distance, I asked him to put his phone down for a bit. Not angrily, not accusingly, just honestly. "I feel like we haven't really talked in days," I said. He sighed, long and heavy, like I'd asked him to quit his job on the spot. "Hannah, this is relationship building. It's how I make money." And he wasn't wrong. His commissions helped pay the bills. We split everything, but his income fluctuated. A good month meant relief. A bad one meant stress. I didn't want to be the reason he felt boxed in. So I swallowed my discomfort. I told myself trust meant silence. I told myself being cool meant enduring unease without naming it. That's what women are taught, aren't we? That the line between trust and self-erasure is thin, and we should always err on the side of being agreeable. Then came the gym phase, 4, sometimes 5 times a week. New clothes, better fitting jeans, haircuts more often, nail cleanups because clients notice details. I was happy for him at first, genuinely. "You look good," I told him once, watching him straighten his shirt in the mirror. He grinned at himself. "Gotta stay competitive." What I didn't say was what I noticed next. Those new clothes never appeared when we went out together. Not at dinner, not with my friends, not when we visited my parents. With me, it was old hoodies, soft joggers, t-shirts with faded logos from bars he didn't even like anymore. It was like there were two versions of him, the one who lived with me and the one who lived somewhere else. And I wasn't invited to wherever that second version existed. I didn't confront him, I didn't accuse him. I collected evidence quietly, stacking observations in the back of my mind like unpaid bills I didn't want to open. Because admitting what I was seeing meant admitting what I'd been ignoring. It meant acknowledging that I had been shrinking, that I had been trading clarity for comfort, that I was sacrificing my instincts to keep a relationship intact. And the truth was, part of me believed that if I just tried harder, if I stayed calm, stayed patient, stayed understanding, he would eventually lean back to me. That's the lie self-denial tells you, that love is a waiting game, that if you endure enough confusion, clarity will reward you. By the time that Wednesday night arrived, I was already exhausted. Not from fighting, but from holding everything in. From pretending I didn't notice the distance. From acting like being last to know was a sign of trust, not exclusion. So when my phone rang at 1:58 a.m. and he demanded money like it was owed to him, something inside me finally stopped negotiating. It wasn't rage, it wasn't heartbreak, it was recognition. And once you recognize the truth, you can't unknow it. Anger didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, disguising itself as clarity. The morning after that call, I sat at the dining table with a mug of coffee gone cold in my hands and realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't shocked. I wasn't scrambling to defend him in my head the way I usually did. I wasn't rehearsing explanations or excuses. For the first time in months, I wasn't trying to make his behavior make sense, because it finally did. When Evan came home later that morning, the apartment still smelled faintly like the unfamiliar cologne he'd worn the night before. He looked wrecked, one shoe missing, hair flattened on one side, that dark button-down wrinkled now, the sharp edges of his carefully curated image softened by sleep and alcohol. He barely glanced at me as he dropped onto the couch. "Water," he croaked. I pointed toward the kitchen. I didn't jump up. I didn't ask if he was okay. I didn't soften my face. Something in my stillness must have registered, because when he turned around with the glass in his hand, he frowned. "What?" he asked, already defensive. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I set my mug down slowly. "You were on a date." The words landed between us like a dropped plate. His face didn't flush. He didn't look guilty. He looked blank, like a computer rebooting, scrambling to load the right response. What? He said again, too quickly. The woman who drove you home, I continued, keeping my voice even, the one you told you were single. Color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. I I can explain, he said. I'm sure you can. I'm just not interested. That shook him. He blinked. Hannah, come on, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Oh? I tilted my head. So last night wasn't your second date with her? A flicker, a micro flinch in his shoulder. There it was, the truth leaking out through his body as his mouth tried to contain it. We just got coffee last week, he said. It wasn't serious. You went on 2 dates with someone while living with me, I said. You lied to her, you lied to me. How is that not serious? It wasn't like that, he insisted. I was just curious. Curious. As if curiosity explained the app download, the profile creation, the swiping, the weeks of messages, the dinner, the second date? Curiosity didn't drive him to lie to 2 women at the same time. Intent did. And what was the plan with that curiosity? A third date? A fourth? See how long you could juggle 2 lives? He rubbed his face. I made a mistake. No, I said quietly. You made a series of choices. His jaw tightened. Can you stop talking to me like I'm a criminal? You've never messed up before? I've never gone looking for someone to replace you. Not once. That landed harder than anything else I'd said. His anger faltered, bleeding into fear. You're not seriously thinking about ending this. Not over this. We've been together 4 years. You ended it, I replied. You just did it quietly, in pieces, and hoped I wouldn't notice. He stepped closer, like proximity could soften the truth. Please, Hannah, let me explain. We can work through this. No, I said, standing. We can't. His voice rose. You're overreacting. And something inside me finally snapped. Not violently, not loudly, but cleanly. You want to know what overreacting looks like? Calling someone at 2 in the morning demanding money and throwing a fit when they don't drop everything to fix your mess. Lying for weeks, playing house while building something else on the side. He opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't let him. You need to leave. He froze. What? The lease is in my name. You're not on it. You have until tonight to pack your things. Confusion flickered across his face, then disbelief, then something uglier. You can't just kick me out. I can, and I am. This is insane. After everything I've done for you? Don't, I warned. Don't rewrite this to make yourself the victim. He threw his hands up. You're throwing away 4 years over one mistake. You threw it away when you downloaded that app. It was just coffee, he scoffed. We didn't even sleep together. That's not the bar. The betrayal started long before she ever got in your car. He paced the room, running his hair through his head, muttering under his breath. Finally, he stopped and looked at me with a familiar expression, one I'd seen before during arguments. You always make things worse than they are. The words hit me with a jolt of déjà vu. Every manipulator I'd ever known had used some version of that line. You're too sensitive. You're dramatic. You're imagining things. But this time, I didn't shrink. I'm done being someone you can lie to. Pack your things. He stared at me, fury simmering beneath the surface. He knew it then. He knew something fundamental had shifted, that this wasn't a fight he could charm or exhaust his way out of. Fine, he spat. I'll be gone by 8. He stormed into the bedroom, yanking drawers open, slamming doors. I didn't follow, I didn't supervise, I didn't explain myself again. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment, my heart pounding but my steps steady. I spent the day working from a coffee shop downtown, the sound of espresso machines and soft chatter grounding me as the last 4 years collapsed quietly behind me. At 2, he texted, "Can we talk about this?" I didn't respond. At 4, "I don't have anywhere to go." I typed back, "You have 4 hours." At 6, "Fine, I'll be gone by 8. When I returned at 8:30, the apartment was half empty. His clothes were gone, his shoes, his posters, his toothbrush. The silence felt different now. Not heavy, clean. On the counter lay a folded note. "I'm sorry, if you change your mind, call me." I didn't open it. I dropped it into the trash. And standing there, alone in the space he'd taken up for so long, the anger finally surfaced fully. Not explosive, not reckless, but sharp and focused. Because now I wasn't just hurt, I was furious at how calculated it had all been. And I was done protecting someone who had never protected me. I thought the hardest part would be asking him to leave. I was wrong. The hardest part came after the door closed behind him, when the apartment stopped echoing with his movements and settled into a silence that felt unfamiliar in a way I couldn't quite name. That first night alone, I didn't cry. Not right away. I wandered from room to room instead, touching things like I was checking whether they were real. The back of the couch where he always draped his jacket, the empty hook by the door where his keys used to hang, the bathroom counter suddenly too clean, too open. It felt like the aftermath of a storm you didn't realize had been violent until you stepped outside and saw what was missing. I slept in fits, waking every hour, my body still braced for the sound of keys in the lock. Each time I surfaced from sleep, there was a split second where I expected to see him beside me, scrolling on his phone, turned slightly away. Each time, the empty space startled me all over again. Morning came without ceremony. I made coffee out of habit, measuring the grounds carefully, pouring water into the machine the way I always did. The domestic routine felt absurd now, like I was pretending nothing had changed while my entire sense of reality sat cracked open. I carried my mug to the living room and sat on the floor, back against the couch, staring at nothing in particular. That was when the messages started. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. I didn't look at it at first. I already knew what I'd see. When I finally picked it up, my stomach tightened anyway. Missed calls, voicemails, texts stacking up in a frantic, uneven rhythm. "You're really doing this? Answer me. Hannah, stop being dramatic. I'm sorry, okay? Can we just talk? You're freezing me out on purpose. I need you. Why are you doing this to me?" The tone shifted as I scrolled. Anger gave way to panic. Panic dissolved into guilt. "After everything I've done for you, I don't have anywhere to go. You're abandoning me." Every message carried the same underlying assumption that my role was to fix this, that my discomfort was negotiable, that his consequences were my responsibility. I set the phone down, face down, the way he used to. For the first time, I understood what that gesture really meant. Around mid-morning, there was a voicemail from an unknown number. The timestamp read 3:42 a.m. My chest tightened. For a brief, irrational moment, my mind went somewhere dark. A hospital, an accident, something terrible. My thumb hovered over the screen, my pulse loud in my ears. I pressed play. "Hi, this is probably weird," a woman's voice said. She sounded young, hesitant. In the background, I could hear the low hum of a car engine. "My name is Lena. Your number is saved in Evan's phone as Hannah/home. He asked me to call you earlier, but it kept going to voicemail." My heart slowed and sharpened at the same time. "I'm parked outside what he says is his apartment building. I just wanted to make sure he actually lives here before I leave. He's really drunk, like barely standing. He said it's apartment 3B. Is that right?" The message ended. I replayed it, then replayed it again. There it was, the final piece sliding into place with a quiet, devastating click. I called her back before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the first ring. "Hello?" "Hi," I said. "This is Hannah." Relief flooded her voice.
Oh, thank God. I really hoping I hadn't just left some random guy at the wrong building. He lives here. We live here. There was a pause. A thick one. Oh, she said softly. He didn't tell me that. No, of course he didn't. She exhaled slowly. I'm so sorry. If I'd known. You didn't. That part's not on you. She hesitated. He told me he was single. We matched on an app a few weeks ago. Last night was supposed to be our second date. Second date. The words landed heavily, but they didn't surprise me. We went to dinner, she continued. He was charming, normal. Then he wanted to go to a bar across town. I drove because he'd already had a couple drinks. He kept drinking, and then things got weird. Weird how? I asked. He started talking about you. At first, he said you were his roommate. Then he messed up and said girlfriend. He got flustered, defensive, told me you were controlling and didn't understand his career. I closed my eyes. Controlling. There it was, the word men like him always reached for when their lies started to crack. I didn't want to be there anymore, she said. So I told him I'd drive him home, but that we shouldn't see each other again. He tried to order a ride, but his account was locked. That's when he started calling you, asking for money. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, that sounds like him. For what it's worth, carefully, she added, the way you handled it didn't sound like abusive. It sounded like someone who was done being used. That sentence hit me harder than anything else she said. We sat in silence for a moment, two women connected by a man neither of us truly knew, standing on opposite sides of the same betrayal. I'm really sorry, she said again. I know, and thank you for making sure he got home safe. After we hung up, I stayed sitting on the floor, phone heavy in my hand. The apartment felt smaller now, like I'd discovered a hidden room I'd never known existed, only to realize someone else had been living there the entire time. That afternoon blurred together. I moved through it in a haze, alternating between numbness and sharp flashes of pain. I wondered how long it had been happening, how many dinners, how many conversations, how many moments I'd been smiling on one end of the couch while he built another life on the other side of the city. By evening, exhaustion settled deep into my bones. I curled up on the bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling as the sky outside darkened. The despair wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It pressed down, slowly, steadily, like weight added one plate at a time. This was the bottom. Not the argument, not the confrontation, not even the betrayal itself. The bottom was realizing how thoroughly I'd been erased from my own relationship. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. And in that emptiness, one terrifying thought echoed again and again. What if I had stayed? What if I had sent the money? What if I had apologized for questioning him? What if I had chosen comfort over truth one more time? The answer made my chest ache. I would have lost myself completely. That night, lying alone in the quiet, I finally let the tears come. Not for him, but for the version of me who had believed love never silence. And when sleep eventually pulled me under, it did so gently, like my body had finally given up the fight. Because somewhere beneath the despair, something else was forming. Not hope, not yet, but the faintest outline of resolute.
I woke up the next morning with a strange sensation in my chest. Not relief, not peace, but something steadier. Clarity. It wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with motivational speeches or dramatic vows. It came quietly, like a light switching on in a room I hadn't realized was dark. I sat up in bed and looked around the apartment. Really looked this time. The empty side of the bed, the half-cleared closet, the space by the door where his shoes used to sit. For the first time since everything unraveled, I didn't feel the urge to fill the silence. I made coffee and drank it standing by the window, watching the city wake up. People walked dogs, cars moved through wet streets. Life continued, indifferent to my heartbreak. And somehow that was comforting. The world hadn't ended. It had simply moved on. My phone buzzed again. I didn't jump this time. I didn't brace myself. I picked it up calmly. More messages from Evan. To me, please talk. I didn't sleep. I made a mistake. I know that now. You don't have to do this. I noticed something immediately. Not one message said, I hurt you. Not one said, I lied. Everything was still about what I was doing to him. That realization sealed something shut inside me. Around mid-morning, I got a call from his mother. I almost didn't answer. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling that familiar pull to protect him, to manage the narrative, soften the edges, take responsibility for how he was perceived. Then I remembered the voicemail from the woman in the car, the entitlement in his voice at 1:58 a.m., the way he looked at me like I was the problem for noticing. I answered. Hannah? She said, her voice tight with worry. It's Evan's mom. Yes, I replied. Hi. He showed up here late last night, she said quickly, with 2 bags, crying. He said you kicked him out over a misunderstanding. Of course he did. I took a breath. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She hesitated. He told me you accused him of cheating, that you've been controlling lately. There it was again, the story he'd chosen, the version where he was confused and wounded, and I was unreasonable. He was cheating, I said calmly. He's been dating someone he met on an app for weeks. She drove him home last night. She didn't know he had a girlfriend. Silence. Not the defensive kind, the stunned kind. He didn't tell me that, she said finally. I didn't think he would, I replied. She exhaled shakily. I'm so sorry, Hannah. There's no excuse for that. The validation hit me harder than I expected, not because I needed her approval, but because it confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't exaggerating. I wasn't cruel. I appreciate you saying that, I said. What are you going to do now? She asked softly. I'm already doing it. Moving on. We ended the call a few minutes later, and when I set my phone down, my hands were steady. 10 minutes after that, my phone buzzed again. Evan, you told my mom everything? I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. She asked. I told the truth. Now she's mad at me, he shot back. That's not my problem. A pause. You're really not going to give me another chance? No. After 4 years? You ended it when you started dating other people. He didn't reply. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel like I needed to justify myself. I felt done. Later that afternoon, I packed up a few things that still felt heavy with his presence. Photos I hadn't deleted yet, a sweatshirt he left behind, little objects that carried more memory than meaning. I didn't do it dramatically. I didn't cry over every item. I just moved through the apartment with purpose, reclaiming space. That evening, one of his friends texted me, I heard what happened. I just wanted you to know you made the right call. Then another. He's been acting shady for months. We just didn't realize how bad it was. And another. Honestly, you put up with more than anyone should have. Each message felt like a small weight lifting off my chest, not because I needed their support, but because the truth was finally standing on its own, no longer propped up by my silence. A few days later, I got a message from the woman who'd left the voicemail. Hey, this might be weird, but I just wanted to check on you. I stared at the screen, surprised by the knot of emotion that formed in my throat. You don't owe me that, I typed back. I know, she replied, but I still wanted to. I feel awful, even though I didn't know. We talked for a while, carefully, honestly. 2 people comparing timelines, recognizing recycled compliments, realizing how deliberately he'd curated different versions of himself depending on who was watching. I'm sorry he lied to you, she said. And I'm sorry he lied to you. The symmetry of it felt grounding. By the end of the conversation, I realized something important. My healing wasn't going to come from understanding him. It was going to come from understanding myself. From recognizing the moment I chose clarity over comfort, the moment I stopped negotiating with reality, the moment I decided that love without honesty wasn't love, it was maintenance. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, not because everything was fixed, but because I had stopped lying to myself. And once that happens,
There's no going back.
I didn't announce the breakup to anyone. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I didn't call mutual friends to plead my case. I didn't correct rumors as they formed. For the first time, I trusted that the truth didn't need my help to survive. And that turned out to be the most satisfying part. It started quietly. One afternoon, while I was reorganizing the kitchen cabinets, moving things simply because I could now, my phone buzzed with a message from Tara, one of Evan's closest friends. We'd always been polite, never particularly close. "Hey," she wrote, "I heard some things. Just wanted to check in. Are you okay?" I hesitated, then typed back the truth. Short, clean, no embellishment. "I am. I ended the relationship after I found out he was dating someone else." There was a pause. Then, "That's not what he told us." I stared at the screen, my heartbeat steady. "I figured," I replied. A few minutes later, another message appeared. "I talked to Jamie, and Jamie talked to someone else. It sounds like Evan left out about 90% of the story." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That pattern repeated itself over the next few days, one person at a time, one conversation at a time, pieces aligning. I didn't chase the truth down. It came to me. Friends started comparing notes, missed details they'd brushed off, inconsistencies they hadn't questioned before, stories he'd told one person that didn't match what he'd told another. "He said you were basically broken up. He said you were emotionally controlling. He said work was just really stressful right now." Excuses stacked on top of each other until they collapsed under their own weight. The most unexpected call came late one evening. It was Lena, the woman who had driven him home that night. "I wasn't sure if I should reach out again," she said carefully, "but I thought you should know. I talked to a couple of his friends." My stomach fluttered, not with dread, but with curiosity. She continued, "I asked them what actually happened. I told them everything, screenshots, dates, messages. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't soften it either." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. There was a pause. "He's telling people you're emotionally abusive." I huffed a short laugh, not surprised, just tired. "I figured," I replied. "They didn't believe him," she said quietly, "not after seeing everything." That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about me winning. This was about him losing control of the narrative. A week later, I ran into Evan by accident. I was at the grocery store on a slow Thursday evening, grabbing cereal and almond milk, when I turned the corner of an aisle and nearly collided with him. He looked thinner, tired. His eyes darted to the cart beside him. A woman stood there, younger than me, bright-eyed. Her hand had been resting casually on his arm until she noticed me. "Hannah," Evan said, voice catching. Hey." The woman blinked. "Is this—" he said too quickly, pulling his arm away from hers. "Nobody." 4 years, shared bills, shared holidays, shared life. I didn't flinch. "Actually," I said calmly, "I'm his ex, the one he lived with until a couple weeks ago." Her face shifted instantly, confusion sharpening into alarm. "You said your ex lived out of state," she said, turning to him. He shot me a warning look, the kind he used to give when he wanted me to stay quiet to protect him. I didn't. "I also has an active dating app profile and a habit of calling women at 2 in the morning, demanding money when his plans fall apart." The woman's eyes widened. "Evan, is that true?" He said, "She's being dramatic." But her girlfriend wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at me, and she saw no drama, only clarity. I met her gaze and offered a small nod. "Good luck," I said. "Just be careful." Then I walked away. I didn't turn around, but I heard her voice, sharp, controlled. "You lied. Again." 2 days later, a text came in from Jamie. She dumped him. Didn't take long. I stared at the message, a strange calm settling over me. I hadn't done anything to make that happen. I had simply stopped covering for him. Over the next few weeks, updates trickled in unintentionally. He's already seeing someone new. People are starting to notice the pattern. No one's buying his version anymore. They landed without impact. They felt like weather reports from a city I no longer lived in.
The real satisfaction didn't come from watching his life unravel, it came from watching mine stabilize. I rearranged the living room, moved the couch, bought plants I actually remembered to water, cleared space where his gaming setup used to dominate a corner. Each small change felt like reclaiming oxygen. One night, while I was making tea, my phone buzzed. It wasn't him, he'd been blocked for weeks. It was an invite from a coworker. "We're grabbing drinks Friday if you want to join." I typed back yes without hesitation. That might sound insignificant. It wasn't. 4 weeks ago, I would have checked with him, managed his mood, worried about appearing selfish. Now, I just went. The night was easy. Laughter, conversation that didn't require me to shrink or explain, people who didn't know me as part of a couple, only as myself. On my way home, I realized something startling. I felt lighter. Not vindicated, not victorious, just free. The satisfaction wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It settled quietly, deeply, like justice delivered without spectacle. Because the truth had done exactly what it always does when you stop interfering with it. It revealed, it clarified, and it made room for something better.
4 months after everything fell apart, my apartment finally felt like mine again. Not empty, not haunted, just settled. The couch sat at a different angle now, closer to the window. New curtains softened the light in the mornings. A small desk by the wall held my laptop and a plant I somehow managed not to kill. The space no longer felt like a version of something that had ended. It felt like a beginning that didn't need to announce itself. People talk about heartbreak like it's loud, crying on bathroom floors, screaming into pillows, dramatic goodbyes played out in public. Mine wasn't loud. It was quiet, orderly, a slow reconstruction, one small choice at a time. I stopped checking my phone compulsively, stopped replaying conversations, stopped asking myself what I missed, what I should have noticed sooner, what I could have done differently. The truth was simple and uncomfortable. I had noticed. My instincts had been screaming. I just loved him more than I trusted myself. That won't happen again. Thursday evenings became my favorite, a small ritual I never planned. I joined a pickup basketball group at a community court near my place, something I never would have tried before. Evan hated it when I did things he wasn't part of. He called it quality time. It took me a while to realize it was surveillance disguised as affection. Now I showed up in worn sneakers, laughed at how uncoordinated I was, and discovered how freeing it felt not to manage anyone else's emotions. One night, as I stretched on the sidelines, a guy from the group tossed me the ball. "You want me to actually guard you?" he asked, "or pretend?" I said, "Pretend. If you play real defense, I'm going home with a twisted ankle." He laughed. "Deal." I took the shot. It bounced off the rim hard. "Progress," he said. "Really?" "No," he admitted, "but you didn't hit anyone. That's something." I laughed, and the sound surprised me. It was bright, unforced, real. After games, we'd grab drinks. People who didn't know my past, who didn't see me as someone's girlfriend, who treated me as whole all on my own. Lena came sometimes too. The first time she joined us, we exchanged a small knowing look. Two women who'd walked out of the same fire without burning each other. She told me she was seeing someone new, someone kind, someone consistent, someone who didn't use charm like a weapon. I was genuinely happy for her. "Are you dating anyone?" she asked me one night. "Not really," I said. "I'm just living slowly." She smiled. "That counts." And it did. Occasionally, updates about Evan drifted my way without me asking. He's on his third girlfriend since you. People are starting to notice the pattern. He keeps saying you were emotionally unstable. No one believes him anymore. They didn't sting. They didn't land anywhere tender. They felt like weather reports from a city I no longer lived in. The real turning point came one evening while I stood at the kitchen counter making tea. My phone buzzed. Not from him, not from anyone tied to that chapter. Just a message from a friend. "You free this weekend? Come hiking with us." I typed yes without hesitation. That might sound small. It wasn't.
4 months earlier, my world revolved around managing someone else's moods, lies, disappearances, and demands. 4 months earlier, I would have waited for permission, for reassurance that I wasn't overstepping. Now I packed a backpack, bought new hiking shoes, and showed up. The trail was steep, the air was clean. Birds, wind, sunlight filtering through leaves. At the overlook, someone casually asked, "Do you ever miss him?" The answer came easily. No. They nodded, satisfied. Then I added, "I don't miss the version of him I created in my head, the one I thought he could be. I only miss the girl I used to be, the one who assumed people told the truth unless given a reason not to." No one rushed to fill the silence that followed. They didn't need to. On the walk back down, I thought about that night again, the 1:58 a.m. phone call that cracked everything open. People have asked if I ever regretted not sending the money. Not for a second. Because that night, something inside me finally aligned. He had spent weeks layering lies, overlapping affections, building a backup life while still coming home to mine. And when his double life collided with reality, he expected me to save him. But I wasn't a safety net. I wasn't a backup plan. I wasn't furniture he could sit on until something newer caught his eye. That night, I chose something radical. Myself. I chose self-respect over chaos, truth over denial, silence over drama, closure over clinging. People can call it cold, harsh, unforgiving. I call it growing a backbone. A quiet one, a steady one, the kind that lets you walk away without looking back. Next month, my lease ends. I'm thinking of moving, closer to work, closer to the park where I run now, a place with no ghosts of him, just room for new chapters, and no 1:58 a.m. calls.